Greetings and welcome back to those of you who have visited our other topics in the Aligned Lesson Series. This guide is about assessment activities, assessments being activities that students accomplish in order to show what they know or can do. Assessment activities begin or arise from clear learning goals. The purpose of assessment activities is to produce evidence of student learning. Assessments can be used for formative or for summative purposes. Let's first take a look at formative assessment. Formative assessment is assessment for learning. These assessments provide feedback to both the student and to you as a teacher about progress toward learning goals. Formative assessments can support student learning toward final course assessment or toward a summative assessment. Formative assessment should build students' confidence that they are on the right track. In simple terms, it should help a student know, I'm on the right track and heading for the goal, or, okay, I'm off track, but now I know what to do to fix it. Let's now take a look at summative assessment. Summative assessment is assessment of learning. It says to a student, this is the end of the line. We're not going to take any more time, at least right now, for learning. So demonstrate how successful you've been at meeting the learning goal. Summative assessments may or may not be required in your school, but all students do benefit from formative assessments that are skillfully designed and used. The difference between formative and summative assessment is in how they are used. Let's now take a look at some of the key things to consider when designing assessment activities. Develop aligned assessment activities that measure student achievement of classroom learning goals by, number one, aligning it to the kind of learning called for in the learning goal. Number two, by selecting an efficient and effective assessment type. For example, selected response, extended written response, performance assessment, or personal communication. Number three, creating student-friendly and fair parameters for how students complete the assessment activity. Let's look at these 3 points one at a time. Consideration number one, aligning it to the kind of learning called for in the learning goal. This is how you can know the kind of learning described in the learning goal. Rick Stiggins categorizes learning into 4 types. Knowledge, for example, explain, describe, identify, name, and so on. Reasoning, for example, analyze, discriminate, compare and contrast, synthesize, and so on. Skill, for example, assemble, operate, use, demonstrate, and so on. And performance product, for example, design, develop, produce, create, and so on. Consideration number 2, selecting an efficient and effective assessment type. For example, selected response, extended written response, performance assessment, or personal communication. The following are well-matched assessment types for each kind of learning. Selected response is a good match for mastery of knowledge. Extended written response can provide a window into the quality of student reasoning and also writing skill. Performance assessment, students can show a particular skill or mastery of skill, knowledge and reasoning as they present or perform big complex products. Personal communication, though it's time-consuming, can show quality of student reasoning. The third thing to consider when designing assessment activities is to create student-friendly and fair parameters for how students complete the assessment activity. Select assessment activity parameters that are reasonable for the classroom situation, accessible to students, and focused on the learning goals. What are the qualities of a well-designed assessment activity? Well, research-based best practices in assessment lead us to ask the following questions. Does this assessment activity elicit rich evidence of student learning? Are the criteria for doing good work clearly stated? Does the criteria for good work relate to the learning goal, or is it focused on assessment parameters? Does the activity provide students with feedback? Does the activity put students in charge of their own learning, provide real-world connections and/or relationships outside of school? And do students act as resources for each other? There is a clear distinction between assessment activities and evaluation. Assessment activities are things that students accomplish in order to show what they know or can do. Evaluation is the judgment about the level of success or achievement the student accomplishes in doing the assessment activity and therefore meeting the learning goals. The development of evaluation criteria is best done with teacher colleagues, as together you examine student assessment products to develop aligned evaluation criteria that define the quality of learning. Consider these things: that criteria are applied to student assessment products, that the criteria are clearly articulated indicators of quality, that the criteria are focused on concepts and learning type called for by the learning goal. Please see evaluation criteria in the aligned video series for more detail about this topic of evaluation criteria. We hope this guide has been useful as you go about the process of designing efficient and effective assessment activities. Check out other videos in the Aligned series that deal with the topics listed on the screen.